We'll give it another minute or so for the rest of the board members to join before we get going.
If they're like me, they probably had a hard time maybe finding the Zoom link. I had to go back to my emails.
I'm only laughing because Jennifer and I just had that conversation. I said, Jennifer, do you have the Zoom link for me? And she said, well, I've sent it to you like 3 times already by email.
But she
I didn't say it quite like that.
I did have presence of mind to remember that she sent it out on Friday afternoon, though. So,
Yes.
are we coming, Brian? Or are we short? Dean and
You're short Al and Dale.
oh, okay, there I see. Okay.
You do have a quorum.
Okay, let's give it about 2 more minutes, then we'll call the meeting to order. According to the Rob Van Kirk calculating process, the Henry's Fork drainage went from 66% average snow water equivalent up to 70 over the weekend. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, I was just looking at it. The Snowtel has the Henry's Fork at 73 as of this morning.
Yeah, I think that's a median number. Rob does average, so
Yeah.
that's different.
I watched that Targhee snow stick, and boy, it was piled up yesterday, and looks like a blizzard skiing condition up there today.
Well, it's kind of quit snowing here now, but it's been snowing all morning. I'll bet we've got another 1.5 or 2 inches just since daybreak.
Oh, Jeff, Al was walking into the meeting room here at IDWR.
Oh, okay. All right, then. We will call board meeting 2-24 to order. It's originating at the Water Center in Boise with participation on Zoom. The first order of business is roll call. Jennifer, please.
Mr. Barker,
Here.
Ms. Cole-Hansen,
Here.
Mr. Gibbs,
Here.
Mr. McMahon,
Here.
Mr. Olmstead,
Here.
Mr. Stevenson,
Here.
thank you. Mr. Van Stone, let's see him, absent, and Chairman Raybould.
Here. Okay, we have a quorum. Thank you, Jennifer. The next agenda item is the South Fork Recharge Project. Who's going to handle
Okay,
that?
Wesley's going to lead off with that, and I think Cooper's going to participate in that presentation as well.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the board. Just to remind everyone, so what we're going to talk about today is the South Fork Recharge Basin Project. And this was a project that was presented to the Aquifer Stabilization Committee back on the 18th of January. And there was some questions that came up, and staff's been working very hard on getting the answers to those questions that the committee members brought up at that point in time. And so what we'll have today is there is a memo and material that's been provided to the board members. Cooper's going to give you a brief presentation to just cover the results of that, and then I'll come back and go over the resolution for you to consider. And so with that, we'll turn it over to Cooper.
Well, that's great. Thank you. Am I coming through? Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, loud and
All right,
clear.
excellent. All right. Okay, well, I appreciate the opportunity to be back with you today. I'm Cooper Fritz, and I coordinate the recharge program for the Water Resource Board above American Falls Reservoir. And so today we're going to be talking about some additional information that we found regarding the proposed South Fork recharge basin. So the proposed basin is here outlined in blue in this center picture here. It's a 30-acre basin inside of a larger 74-acre parcel, which is outlined in white. To give you an idea about where we are in the state, we're about 10 or 12 miles northeast of Idaho Falls in the Willow Creek drainage. So some board members had some questions. It's a 74-acre parcel. How are only 30 acres available for excavation? So I went through, these are unsurveyed results, but generally these are areas that might not be available for excavation throughout the duration of the project. So we've got the Anderson Canal itself. The Anderson is a large canal. It's capable of carrying 350 CFS. It's capable of delivering year-round throughout the irrigation season 100 CFS. So that means that, even in late June, early July, when the Water Resource Board's natural flow right can still be available in kind of exceptional years, 100 CFS can be delivered to this site. But one of the drawbacks is such a large canal and its maintenance road does take up some space as it bisects the parcel. That's about 2.25 acres. The Anderson makes an elbow, as you can see here. And so at this time, the Anderson is not proposed to be rerouted. So we have these acres to the west and the south of the elbow that are not available for excavation. And then we have these perimeter acres. So these will host a perimeter road, as well as just some acres that will be used to square the basin. So those are about 2 acres each to the east, north, and west of the basin. And then finally, we have this area south of the basin, which hosts the Willow Creek Channel itself, and as well as a small lateral ditch. And so, at this time, that's 10 acres that aren't available for excavation in the southern portion of the basin. Now, Willow Creek makes an oxbow through the property. And so you'll see, we have a total of about 20 acres that are not proposed for excavation at this time, just really can't be excavated in the current proposal. But you'll see that question mark. That's because potentially the oxbow in Willow Creek can be removed. And if it's authorized for removal, which isn't clear at this time, but if it is authorized for removal, that gives us an additional 5 acres in addition to this current 30-acre basin. These are the so-called oxbow acres. There's just not much to do about the 5 other acres that are south of the little lateral ditch there. And then there are these phase 2, these so-called phase 2 acres. Now, I know initially the plan is to excavate the area in blue down 15 feet below ground surface. All of that fill has to be stored somewhere. So right now that is in this phase 2 area. I think the plan ultimately, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but the plan is to find a buyer for that excavated material. And then hopefully as we move through phase 2, it could be trucked off as it was excavated. But in any case, there's 28 potentially available additional acres in addition to the 30. So we're looking at a total of, about 58 potentially available acres out of the 74. So some other questions were raised, what's 15 feet below ground surface? Are we getting into just 15 feet of topsoil at this location? So we dug 2 test pits within the basin itself. And so these are the results. These are 2 These are two little pits that we dug just within the perimeter of the proposed basin. And on the left, we have elevations below ground surface. So we've got topsoil 0 to 1 foot below ground surface, overburden 1 to 6 feet below ground surface, but 15 feet below ground surface, we're well into this finely sorted gravel and cobble matrix here. And this, I'll show you some pictures on the next slide, but the results were really just the same, although I took not as good of a picture from this angle, but really what we're into in both 15 feet below ground surface is just this, I'll show you some zooming in here, just this really high porosity, really high permeability. This was pretty exciting stuff, frankly, when we ran into it, in that it will infiltrate our water. So 3.7 CFS per acre, which is what the neighboring Jones pit does appear to be achievable based on what we're seeing here. This 110 CFS over this 30-acre basin, I just don't see being an issue based on the returns, the test pit results. This middle picture then is just that test pit material brought to the Earth's surface, and you can compare it to the cat tracks there in the mud. But really, this is exciting. This was exciting to excavate down these test pits and find this level of permeability and porosity. So then some items about the budget. This is the budget we went over last time. So some questions were brought up about the property value, you know, pretty expensive at 1.628. So we got the USPAP appraisal done for it. It appraised for $1.63 million, meaning that the property under contract is actually slightly below market value. You know, and then some questions arose about what's going to happen with this excavated material. And I talked with Progressive, and they're on the line, so you can get it directly from them. But, you know, profits that don't directly involve the basin, I think, are understood to be returned to the project to offset its cost. So, you know, if they sell the gravel, you know, they would return that, you know, approximately $450,000-$500,000 to the recharge site costs, you know, to the site costs, and not only the gravel, but the water right, any acres that they use beyond, you know, direct maintenance of the basin or the basin itself. They want to return, and not only do they want to sell it, I think from their perspective, to return it to the project, but also to open up that phase 2, those 23 acres that we were talking about there north of the Anderson. And as we move to close out this presentation, I did just, and open it up to questions, I did just want to say, you know, this is really exciting recharge here in the Willow Creek drainage generally. It's really kind of, as we've talked about before, kind of that tier 2 recharge, that medium retention of 50% returning in 2 years, impacting these 3 reaches, the High C to Shelley, the Shelley to near Blackfoot, and near Blackfoot to Neely, in similar proportions, with the travel time to those reaches increasing as distance from the basin increases, as you would expect. But nevertheless, Willow Creek recharge really does appear to be really excellent recharge. And so with that, I think it's time to open it up to questions. And I appreciate being here.
Okay, questions?
Mr. Chairman, this is Mark.
Yeah.
I just want to thank staff for going back and taking another look at this since the 19th of January and providing the information that was in the packet that was sent to us for the pre-meeting discovery on this. And I'm much more confident that the Water Board is pursuing a good project with the result of this additional work that the staff's done. It's just not a question. It's just a thank you to the staff.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, this is Dean.
Yeah.
Cooper, what's the plan for the water rights that come with this parcel?
You know, I think the plan is to initially kind of bank them before selling them and returning that either to the project if it's under construction or to the Water Resource Board if the construction has been completed. I think that I think the plan is to sell them and return the profits.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman Cooper?
Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, this is Brian. Could I follow up on that? I think as I read the water rights, there was actually some water rights in Enterprise Canal, which is a canal company, and some water rights in Progressive, which is an irrigation district. Are those all moved the same way or market the same way, or all have to stay where they are the same way?
My understanding is that the shares can, we have some flexibility there. Right now, there's a Willow Creek right that's stacked with Enterprise shares on this property. So the Willow Creek right is the one I've been paying more attention to, I confess, and you can really move it to where there's irrigation district shares, wherever the buyer is, as long as they have shares in Willow Creek. As far as the irrigation district and the canal company, my understanding is that they've got a water right acreage under their water rights. So they can move this around, but then, there's this complexity of it's got to be stacked with Willow Creek rights. So they kind of have to stay together, but they can move around.
Okay. And then one other question I was posed actually by somebody. It looks to me like these pits will percolate like crazy. Has that been the experience in the area with, your confidence is pretty high that this will, it looks to me like the 3.5 CFS per acre is no problem, but there's, we're not going to find out that we fill it full of water and it doesn't go anywhere, are we?
I don't think that'll be an issue. That it's again, the only real issue that would be a concern with this site is the fall. The water level in the fall is 40 feet below ground surface. So recharge could be somewhat limited, but no, having seen those excavated those test pits, it'll take the water.
And in the spring, like right now, that groundwater level is 120 feet or way down there. Or?
Yeah, throw the whole in. Yes, the groundwater depth is like 110 or more below ground surface.
Yeah.
It'll take whatever we can throw at it in the spring, and that's when the natural flow right is on.
I just wanted to ask the question. I've got confidence in your analysis, and I agree. You really did a nice job of researching this. Thanks.
I appreciate the opportunity. This was excellent questions.
Okay, any other questions from board members?
Chairman.
Yes, go ahead.
Al Barker. So Cooper, I heard you say that there's excess capacity in the canal of 100 CFS. Is that right or not?
That's right.
Okay, so if the area to the south of the canal will take 110 CFS, why do we need the area to the north of the canal as phase 2?
Well,
we only can put 100 CFS into the canal.
It has to do with those times before the irrigation season begins, and even in early May, late April, as it's ramping up, and that peak demand of 250 CFS isn't on the system. The canal capacity through there is 350 CFS. So, that's ultimately what could be delivered here without improvements.
Right. But so how often are they not delivering, or are they delivering less than 250? I guess I'm just trying to understand why we are looking for phase 2 if we don't have much additional capacity to recharge into phase 2, unless we spend a whole lot more money either enlarging the canal or doing something else.
Yeah, I think
the progressive people can explain the answer to that. I don't know.
Mr. Chairman, Board Member Barker, I think I can give a shot at this. The 100 CFS available is is an extremely conservative number that even when the canal is at its max delivery capacity, there's still 100 CFS left. As far as developing new, that max capacity usually doesn't hit until around that July period, maybe the latter part of June. So that spring period when our water is normally available, there's extra capacity for recharge during that time.
How much? That's what I'm asking. How much additional capacity is there in these shoulder seasons? And is it worth it to buy another 25 acres or 30 acres?
So Cooper, do you have that number off the top of your head? I know you've looked at that before.
I don't. I can find it somewhere in the recesses of the hard drive. But it's really there's the capacity to deliver between 100 and 350. So for example, 350 CFS could be delivered through April 15th. And then some demand will kick on in their system. That's 100 CFS of demand from April 15th to May 15th. So that capacity they could deliver when that irrigation demand is on is 250 CFS. But basically what this particular location offers us is 100 CFS guaranteed no matter the irrigation demand on the system. I think their interest is financial, so they'll want to deliver more if they can up to 350 CFS. But they can always deliver 100.
Okay, other questions? Cooper, if I might, it seems to me like the material that was sent out to the board before the January 19th meeting, that original material that came out showed a lot less advantage to the near Blackfoot to Neely portion of the aquifer. It seemed like it was about 9%. And then the day of the meeting, it popped up to this 29%. Did I read those initial numbers from the pre-meeting materials wrong, or how did we change by 20%?
I appreciate the question. Okay, so there are two things, there are two modeling results presented. One is from the actual model cell, and that's that smaller number that you're talking about. It shows a much flashier return and a disproportionate impact on the high C to Shelley reach. The model cell that's from is on the model boundary, and models are not so great there. And that seems like South Fork recharge. That's South Fork recharge modeling. The numbers here are from Willow Creek, and we're out of the South Fork drainage and into the Willow Creek drainage based on the groundwater, the depth to groundwater in this vicinity, as well as the fact that Willow Creek runs through the property.
Okay.
So these modeling results then are from actually down gradient on Willow Creek, but well within the Willow Creek drainage, as opposed to the modeling edge where the actual basin sits. It's just on the periphery of the model. It's not the best modeling. This is Willow Creek modeling. This is from a down gradient basin known as the 55th Road site.
Okay. So, it's modeling from the 55th Road site.
That's right. Which is downstream on Willow Creek.
Yeah.
Okay. Willow Creek recharge, I think, is just premier tier 2. That's just my opinion. And this is my opinion about how it will impact.
Okay. All right. I just need to clear that up in my mind.
Absolutely.
Okay. Board members, any other questions? Okay. We have a resolution before us. Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
Mr. Chairman, this is Dean. I'd move to approve the resolution.
Okay. Is there a second?
Brian seconds.
Okay, Wesley, it looked like you were on the verge of saying something.
So Mr. Chairman, members of the board, one of the things I want to go over, so we've been working on this resolution, and I just want to make sure that all the changes made it out to the board members. And so I'm going to share my screen just to go over it, just to make sure that the board members know exactly what's in the resolution.
Okay, all right, I'm
And-
sorry, Wesley, I got ahead of you.
Not a problem, sir. And so I'm actually going to jump down to line 67, right before we start the now therefores, just to make it clear that the work that the Progressive Irrigation District's doing with Willow Creek, that's all on them, and we don't have anything to do with that. Starting the therefores, there's the 5.8.
Sorry, Wes.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, can I interrupt for a second?
Absolutely.
Does that mean that the costs associated with alteration of Willow Creek are not going to be paid out of water board funds?
That is correct.
Yeah, I think the word cost should go in that sentence somewhere then.
So we can add that in. It's not currently in the budget for doing any work along those lines, but I don't see any issue of putting that in.
So Mr. Barker, something like potential issues or costs related,
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
okay? All right.
Okay. So going on to the first therefore, and basically what that says is that, you know, the $5,868,000 would come from the ARPA funding or other funds controlled by the Water Resource Board. And the second therefore, and I'll explain why that's been put in there, is that the board would authorize expenditures of up to 1.628 million. And that is not above the 5.8 to come from the secondary fund. And why that's in there is we're still working out does that land that's not immediately developed for a recharge basin, can that be covered under the ARPA funds? So on a conservative side, we put that potentially the full cost would come out of the secondary fund. There is money available in that budget for work in other aquifers, and there's some of that that's in the secondary fund for developing projects in the Upper Valley. Just want to kind of keep it open to see how we develop this. Minimally, what's predictable, it would be less than the 1.6 coming out of the secondary fund, as the cost of the land under the recharge basin, that could be, ARPA funds could be used for those funds. So I'm going to stop with those two and see if the board members have any questions.
Questions?
So, Mr. Chairman, Wes, so that means we don't know for sure if we can buy the land with the ARPA funds? Is that the problem?
What we're unsure about is that land that's not developed immediately as a recharge basin. We're just not sure about that. There is potential, given that it's used for the project to store the gravel and whatnot on. It could still count, but there's still some legwork to do there.
Mr. Chairman, Wes, just kind of a little follow-up on that. In some ways, if we are essentially buying that additional 27 acres or whatever it is with non-ARPA funds, it probably gives us more flexibility if we don't choose to develop that to resell it or something like that. And I could be wrong on that, but I would just assume that would be pretty unfavorably looked upon by ARPA if ARPA funds were used and then you sold that property.
Mr. Chairman, Board Member Olmstead, you are absolutely correct. That is one of the things that we're wanting to kind of ferret to ground, is just what are the advantages and disadvantages of that.
Okay, so just a wild guess, approximately half of the land could be purchased with ARPA money where the development's going to occur, and the other half would potentially come out of the secondary aquifer account just to avoid any complications with how to deal with that property in the future.
Mr. Chairman, that is absolutely correct.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Okay. So the third, therefore, starting on line 79, basically, I'm just going to kind of paraphrase this. It basically states that any profit or advantage that's from that land that's not immediately turned into a basin, that money would come back to the board to offset the cost of this project.
Okay, Wes, why is it just only non-ARPA? If there's proceeds that come back, it looks to me like any proceeds that come back, whether it's ARPA dollars or secondary aquifer dollars, that money should come back to the board to expand this project or do other projects in the area.
So partly what we're looking at there, Mr. Chairman, is with the non-ARPA funds, it starts getting really complicated of how that money is returned. And so partly what we're looking at here is trying to circumvent the issues with doing that.
Well, if you buy say you buy the half where you're building the recharge basin with ARPA dollars, and then you sell the topsoil, the gravel, whatever is excavated out of there, where would the proceeds of that otherwise go?
To the where that would come in to is why there's probably an advantage of using these secondary fund to purchase that land that's not immediately being put under a recharge site.
I'm talking about the land that immediately is being, where the recharge site's going to be constructed. That's the first pile of gravel and topsoil you're going to have.
Right, and the way this is written, Mr. Chairman, is that if you use ARPA funds for that, it's silent on what happens to those funds.
It's yeah, where the proceeds from the sale of that byproduct go?
That is one of those things I would have to run aground with the AG's office. And since that was their crafting, that they put that in there. And so I would have to check with them.
And Mr. Chairman, I have another, I think, clarification. I think this is what the intent was, but it says require any profits from sale or use of the land. And I think we should add water rights or excavated materials to that, so that all of those things would come back to the cost, reduce the cost of the project. That is what we talked about last time.
And that can be added, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Barker, that can be added back in. Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
Ms. Joanne, Wes, was it the intent to use the secondary aquifer fund to, the way this is written to me, it sounds like the intent is to buy all of the land with money, non-ARPA money. So we would avoid the issue of resale of or selling the excavated material.
Mr. Chairman, Board Member Cole-Hansen, That was the conservative way that we're looking at it. We were still figuring out what the advantages were of, do we do part, do we do all of it? Just trying to figure the best path forward. This just provide us the opening for that. So then it wouldn't go over that, but potentially it could be less depending on what we figure out.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah,
Al
Al.
Barker, could I ask Brian Patton, does it matter where we get the money from for this project? In terms of, we've got funds available, right, in both. So if the question is, if we use the money to buy the land and then there's questions about, can we get it back? Why don't we take it all the land out of the secondary aquifer fund and then use the ARPA funding for construction of the project? And that solves this question of what can we and can't we do with the ARPA money if we sell something? Would that be a better way to do it?
It probably would be. Just our direction has been to make sure we don't leave any ARPA money on the table at the end of 2024.
Oh, there'll be plenty of takers.
But I think that what you've come up with is maybe a better way to go purchase all the land with secondary aquifer funds and then do the construction with ARPA. As long as the amount built into the resolution is sufficient to purchase all the land. And I'm going to look back at Wesley for that.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the 1.628.
Yes.
Right? That's the contract price that Progressive has for this purchase, right?
That is correct.
If that's what we're gonna do, why don't we clean this thing up and say we're going to expend up to X for the construction of the project of ARPA monies, and we're gonna expend the $1,628,000 out of the secondary aquifer account for the purchase of the property.
Yes, we can absolutely do that, Mr. Chairman.
I mean, I look to Brian, look across the room at Brian, Wesley. I just think that would be cleaner that way. And then we could clean up this line 79 and just say that should funds be distributed for the project, any profits, and then add the language in that Al had that covers everything, will come back to the board.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman, we can do that. And Mr. Patton agrees, by the way, in case you didn't hear that.
Okay.
Yeah, well, Mr. Chairman, we'll get this language cleaned up on the final version. I assume that Mr. Barker might have made a motion to amend the agenda. The resolution, excuse me.
Yeah. Yeah, let's start over for a minute. Let's ask the maker of the motion to adopt and the second to withdraw that motion in the second. And then we could just make these changes by amendment, and then we'll approve the amended resolution.
Second is withdrawn.
The maker is friendly to that.
Okay. All right. Thank you, guys. Okay. Is there anything else we need to cover here? The rest of this, therefore now be it resolved.
Just the last thing I'll cover, Mr. Chairman, is the now therefore starting on line 85, and that the Water Resource Board will not release funds for this project until agreements to deliver recharge water to the 55th Road recharge site and this project are fully executed, including the necessary agreements between Progressive and the Enterprise Canal Company.
Okay. All right. All right. Any other questions on how this resolution's been explained?
Mr. Chairman, can I speak to that last language that was just referenced?
Yes.
So again, my name is Lance Schuster. I'm chairman of Progressive Irrigation District. And as I explained at our last meeting, we've been involved in recharge projects for quite a long time. My concern about this language with respect to the recharge site on 55th East is just simply that Enterprise up to this point has been unwilling to enter into any negotiations with Progressive Irrigation for use of its system to deliver water to the 55th East recharge site.
Well, what portion of your system are you using? Or would they be using?
They would be using Sand Creek, for example, to get water to the 55th East recharge site.
Wasn't
Sand Creek
Sand Creek a creek?
is not a creek. Back in the day, it was a creek, but it's a canal. A lot of our system consists of old high water channels that used to carry water, but the only time Sand Creek, for example, ever has any water in it is when Progressive Irrigation interjects water into Sand Creek. It's otherwise a dry channel. So we have a number of our canals that are basically channels that were adopted by Progressive Irrigation back in the 1880s as part of its canal system. Sage Creek, Sand Creek, Little Sand Creek, these are all channels that are part of our system. So we are certainly willing to discuss with Enterprise use of our system to deliver water to the recharge site that they've purchased and developed. That 55th East recharge site is within Progressive Irrigation's boundaries. We would like to work something out with Enterprise, but up to this point, they've shown no indication that they are willing to negotiate or want to even negotiate regarding use of our system. So I point that out because I'm concerned that if this entire project is contingent upon Progressive Irrigation entering into an agreement with Enterprise, I don't know if Enterprise is going to be willing to enter into an agreement. I fear that this language would perhaps, because of Enterprise's unwillingness to negotiate, this language could torpedo the South Fork Recharge Project.
Is there capacity in Sand Creek to carry that recharge water?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Then what's the problem?
They haven't wanted to negotiate.
What
It's
are you,
part of
what are you negotiating?
Well, it's part of our system, and we have to have some sort of carrying agreement or wheeling agreement that would assure that we have maintenance and control over our own system. We would have to have an agreement that requires Enterprise to be responsible for some of the transportation losses. We have to be able to, as I indicated, operate and maintain our canal system. If Enterprise wants to run a train down our train tracks, there has to be some control by Progressive Irrigation over when and where those trains are going down the train tracks. That might be the best analogy. So we're certainly willing to work with Enterprise, but they haven't indicated that they want to work with Progressive Irrigation.
Okay. Board members, any comments? Here's how I think we ought to handle this. I think we ought to pass the resolution as written. If we get to a point where we cannot get Enterprise and Progressive together to work out the wheeling agreement to the pond that we've already approved, on the 55th Road, then we could look at this again. But I think for today, this is probably the way we ought to pass the resolution.
Mr. Chairman, question maybe for Brian Patton. Have you had some conversation with Enterprise? Do you see a way to solve this?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Olmstead, I mean, the solution involves the two irrigation, the canal company and the irrigation district, sitting down and resolving their differences. I think until that's done, perhaps deliveries to both recharge projects are potentially at risk. So it's in the board's interest to encourage that to happen.
Mr. Chairman, for what it's worth, I have talked to Enterprise and they do seem to be willing to sit down with me, but I'm not progressive. My interest is in getting water to the 55th Road site and the South Fork Basin if it's passed.
Okay. Any other board member comment?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes.
It seemed that time was of the essence in trying to get the resolution passed so that the land could be purchased. But am I hearing now that there might be a conflict with getting water delivered to the developed recharge site? Or is there a way to get water to the developed recharge site without an agreement with Enterprise?
Well, the 55th Road site that is developed, that has a sign in front of it that says this is a part of the Leading Idaho program, does not have a mechanism to have water delivered to it right now. So that's what we need to get worked out.
Okay.
Well,
So,
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Chairman, this is Al. I think Joanne's point is that why are we putting money up to buy something if we're not sure we're going to be able to get water to this site because of the holdup on the other side?
Well, I don't think there's a problem getting water to the new proposed site, the South Fork site that Progressive's putting in. They've got their own system, their own canal. There's apparently some conflict over whether Sand Creek is a creek or whether it's a canal. And I think that we need to get the parties together and get that worked out. But I do think that we should make sure that that happens. Did you have a comment, Brian? Brian?
well, Mr. Chairman, I too think time is of the essence, and I will move that with the amendments that we talked about earlier, that we go ahead and I move that we approve this resolution with the amendments that were made earlier, and we leave that language to resolve the difference between Enterprise and Progressive as it is in the resolution.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
Mr. Chairman, this is Al. I'll second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any debate on the motion? Okay, hearing none, we will proceed to vote. Roll call vote, please, Jennifer.
Mr. Barker,
Aye.
Ms. Cole-Hansen,
Aye.
Mr. Gibbs,
Aye.
Mr. McMahon,
Aye.
Mr. Olmstead,
Aye.
Mr. Stevenson,
Aye.
Mr. Van Stone is absent, and Chairman Raybould.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, all right. Next on the agenda is the Lewiston Orchards Exchange Project. Who's handling that, Brian?
Neely Miller is gonna lead off with that discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Patton. Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Patton. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. At the end of this brief update, you'll be asked to consider a resolution to approve terms and conditions for the Lower Clearwater Exchange Project. That's a project for the Lloyd. I've included some background here in the memo on the screen, but as you'll recall, on December 4th of 2023, Lloyd submitted a request for $1,287,000 to the board to fund a 30% engineering and design study Lloyd representatives provided a presentation on the funding request at the board's January 11th Finance Committee. And then on January 19th, the board passed a resolution authorizing that $1,287,000 to complete the engineering and design study for the project. In that resolution, the board directed staff to work with project sponsors to develop appropriate contract terms and conditions to be brought back to the board for approval. A draft resolution has been prepared to approve contract terms and conditions, as well as to specify the expenditure of funds, and that is attached. Briefly, I guess I'll jump to the terms and conditions first, and then we can look at the resolution. So again, this is attachment A to the resolution for terms and conditions, and this is for the Lower Clearwater Exchange Project. That's the official title for this project. Into these terms and conditions, I've built in some background for this project, just so everyone understands what has taken place on this project, and then how we arrived at where we are now, the next step for Lloyd. And so what they're proposing is to further evaluate that 10% design and bring it to a 30% design for that Clearwater River action alternative. Staff has identified some fairly basic cost reimbursement terms and conditions. This would be a cost reimbursement contract not to exceed, where the board has approved a limited funding for the project, and then the sponsor would be responsible for the remainder of the costs. Staff is proposing a 10% holdback on funds until project completion form is submitted. And then there are some monthly progress report requirements, as well as also some final invoice and final summary project costs that will be required. For example, the total final cost of the project based on expenditures, list all funding sources and the amount used on any aspect of the project. And then if a federal or state grant was awarded for any portion of this project, they would also have to report that amount. So those are fairly straightforward terms and conditions, and be happy to discuss those with the board if there are questions. But now I will jump to the resolution. And this is a resolution to approve contract terms and conditions for this Lower Clearwater Exchange project. Jumping down to the now therefores. Now therefore be it resolved, the board approves terms and conditions for the Lower Clearwater Exchange project as specified in attachment A to this resolution. And that's what we were just looking at. Second, now therefore be it further resolved that the board authorizes the expenditure of up to $1,287,000 from the water management account for the Lower Clearwater Exchange project, 30% engineering and design work. Here, staff has included the water management account. I think this is probably up for discussion with members. The thoughts were here is there were significant procurement requirements associated with ARPA funds. And I think there was a desire by Lloyd to move quickly on this. And we talked with the Lloyd folks, and this seemed to be workable for them. But I'm sure this is something the board may want to discuss. I'll just cover these last two now therefores, and then I'll open it up for discussion. Now therefore be it further resolved, the contract for this project will also contain some additional contract conditions and other project specific terms and conditions that are not included in this resolution. And then lastly, this resolution would authorize its chairman or designee to execute the necessary agreements or contracts for the purpose of this resolution. With that, I would stand for any questions.
Okay, board members, questions for Neely?
And I guess I should add, we do have a representative from Lloyd that is on the Zoom, and that's Barney Metz, so he could answer any questions if the board had questions for him.
Okay, board members, do you have any questions for Mr. Metz? Mr. Metz, do you have any comments or anything you would like to add?
We, as a board, have and staff for the LOID have reviewed these terms and conditions and find them acceptable. The Lloyd board has authorized us to proceed forward once the award has been completed by the Idaho Water Resource Board. And I spoke with our engineers this morning, and they are prepared for us to sign a document tomorrow if this goes forward and begin work. And we truly appreciate the board's support and interest in this. You guys have been nothing short of fabulous.
Okay, we'll try not to let that go to our heads.
Can we put that in the resolution?
Yeah.
We would be more than happy to see it in there.
Okay, all right. Any other questions or comments, board members? Okay, I think we talked about this project quite a bit at the work session and at the board meeting. I'd entertain a motion to approve the resolution or adopt the resolution, excuse me.
Mr. Chairman, Pat McMahon, I move to adopt the resolution.
Okay, I have a motion. Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, this is Mark. I'll second it.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none, we will go ahead and vote on the motion. Jennifer, call the roll, please.
Sure. Mr. Barker,
Aye.
Ms. Cole-Hansen,
I abstain.
Mr. Gibbs,
Aye.
Mr. McMahon,
Aye.
Mr. Olmstead,
Aye.
Mr. Stevenson,
Aye.
Mr. Van Stone is absent, and Chairman Raybould.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, thank you very much. Next up, item 4, metric evapotranspiration. Brian.
Yes, I'm going to turn this over to Phil Blankenau. Phil is, for those who haven't met him, he did give a presentation on this at a committee meeting about 6 months ago or so. But Phil is our resident in-house expert on metric evapotranspiration and doing a good job and anxious to get moving with this ground truthing project. So Phil, I'll hand it over to you.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. We're going to.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, I'll go ahead and just jump in and introduce it in general. But Brian is absolutely right that Phil has done all the heavy lifting here and is excited to be able to bring this resolution before the board. As Brian mentioned, this resolution, or at least this concept of the ground truthing project, was initially proposed last May. It was, and then department staff has since moved forward with a request for proposals to complete the project and is now ready for, I guess, the board to weigh in. I'll provide just a little bit of background to refresh your memory. And of course, Phil is here to address specific questions. And you do have a copy of his presentation in your workbooks if you want to flip through that. And he can certainly walk through some aspects of it. But in general, evapotranspiration, as we all know, as ET, is a large component of our water budgets that are built into IDWR's groundwater models and other projects. And that, of course, includes the Eastern Snake Plain groundwater model. And IDWR and the University of Idaho developed a model to map ET using Landsat satellites. And it's known as the metric model, which Phil described in detail in his presentation several months ago. But metric stands for mapping evapotranspiration and high resolution with internalized calibration. Metric is one of the primary methods that's been employed by IDWR to quantify ET since 2005. But more recently, modelers have become concerned about the defensibility of the metric model estimates, as it usually estimates are higher, provide higher ET than compared to other data sets. So to help reduce that growing uncertainty surrounding the department's ET modeling decisions, the board budgeted $1 million in the 2024 fiscal year 2024 Secondary Aquifer Planning, Management, and Implementation Fund budget. And the intent was to produce a high-quality ground truth data set that involves measuring ET in the field and will provide a solid basis for to verify or improve the metric model calibrations or to select a suitable alternative models. And while the board budgeted funds for the project, the secondary fund budget resolution does require an additional board resolution to authorize the expenditure of funds, with the understanding that the board will seek proposals through a procurement to better define those project costs. So Phil presented those details in May, and the department and the Division of Purchasing have moved forward to publish an RFP that was published on November 28th, 2023. And they are now prepared to award a contract pending board approval today, based on the resolution that you have for project funding. So the resolution, and we can look at that in detail, but it does authorize the expenditure of up to $1 million from the secondary fund. The winning proposal actually came in a little less than that, but we're requesting that the board authorize expenditure of up to the full $1 million to cover any unforeseen costs as they move forward with the project. And I see Jennifer has the resolution up before you. I will stop now and see if you have any questions for Phil about any of the details of the proposal itself, or we can both speak to the resolution.
Okay, questions?
Mr. Chairman, I do have a. What do we, I know we're still doing this ground truthing, but what do you expect if our estimates are generally higher than other folks' estimates? What effect does that have on water availability for, and how would it be used, I guess is maybe the question.
Sure, Mr. Chairman and Barker. Essentially, if we're overestimating ET, I guess the primary use of this data is in the groundwater model. So it's used kind of in two places. It's used to estimate on surface water area lands incidental recharge. And then for groundwater lands, irrigated lands, it's used to estimate how much water is being withdrawn, so pumping. So you kind of be overestimating pumping maybe, and then also overestimating potential recharge on surface water area lands. How that would balance out in the model, I'm not sure.
Does that answer your question, Al?
As far as I got, yes.
Well,
no, I don't have any further questions, Mr. Chair.
Well, if memory serves, and probably should have studied that presentation so my mind would be sharper, but potentially, and based on what I see in this resolution, we may be overestimating how much water the crops are using, and this will help us further calibrate metric so that we have a more precise amount as to what we're actually using in the way of growing crops. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, that's the goal.
That's kind of what I understood. And Mr. Chairman, one more question. We've got a chart here, Phil, in your presentation that shows how this is going to be incorporated into the different basins, groundwater modeling and basin characterization projects. Is that flow chart you got there, or bar chart? Is that something that's part of this evapotranspiration study that says we're going to do it here in the ESPA first, and then Wood, and then Treasure Valley, and so on?
The focus really is going to be on the Eastern Snake Plan. We're going to try to put all validation sites. I think we're going to shoot for putting them within the model boundary. And then hopefully whatever we find is transferable to the other basins.
So we're going to take the information from the ESPA and extrapolate it to the Wood, the Big Lost, Boise, et cetera.
That's correct.
That's
Okay.
all my questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, board members, any others with questions or comments? Okay, I'm hearing none. You want to walk us through the motion? You gonna do that, Cynthia, or who are we gonna?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Jennifer's moved us to the resolution. And again, we'll jump to the now therefore be it resolves on line 30. You'll see that this resolution would authorize expenditure of up to $1 million from the secondary fund for completion of the ground truthing project. And the resolution also authorizes the board's chairman or designee to execute the necessary agreements or contracts for the purposes of this resolution.
Okay. Any questions on the resolution?
Mr. Chairman, this is Mark. I move to adopt the resolution.
Okay, I have a motion to adopt the resolution. Is there a second?
Mr. Chair, I'll second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we will proceed to vote. Jennifer, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Barker,
Aye.
Ms. Cole-Hansen,
Aye.
Mr. Gibbs,
Aye.
Mr. McMahon, Mr. McMahon.
Aye.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Mr. Olmstead,
Aye.
Mr. Stevenson,
Aye.
Mr. Van Stone absent, and Chairman Raybould.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you all, one and all, very much. Okay, are there any non-action items for discussion? Board members?
Mr. Chairman, this is Brian. I think you probably all know this, but we've gotten people pretty excited about recharge pits in eastern Idaho. So I have a feeling we're going to be seeing some more proposals.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Brian, is there anything we need to be updated on or aware of?
Just want to bring a couple of things to board members' attention. On Wednesday this week, Chairman Raybould and Director Weaver will be presenting to the House Resource Committee. So that will be streamed live at the legislature's website. Also on Thursday, Brian Olmstead will be speaking at a governor's event over at the Nampa Reuse Project. So there'll be a governor's press conference and et cetera over there. And then the next regularly scheduled board meeting is March 28 and 29 here in Boise.
Okay. Anything else?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Brian, what time is the presentation on Wednesday?
It will, Mr. Chairman, Joanne, it will be at 1:30 in the afternoon Boise time.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
That's probably when the committee meeting starts. We could
Yeah.
be on front end, back end, middle of that committee.
That is true. I've not yet seen an agenda.
Yeah. Tune in early. You surely wouldn't want to miss us. Okay. All right. With that, somebody wanted to make a motion to adjourn. I think we could be done here today.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay. Al and maybe Mark seconded. Does that sound about right, Jennifer?
I think it's Joanne, but
Oh, okay. Whatever you got, Jennifer, I think.
however you want to say it is good with me.
Okay. All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you for spending some time working through this recharge project. I think it'll be a good one once we get all the things worked out. Okay? All right, with that, I guess we're out.